placed the chiller off to the side of the aquarium stand, and we've now hooked up the two hoses on the in and outlet side of that chiller. Here we're going to take and use a plastic snap clamp, a nifty little ratchet type clamp, to secure the discharge side of the water pump. The discharge of the pump will lead into the inlet of the chiller unit, and in return, the outlet of the chiller will come back to the underside of the tank. It's at this point we want to insert a Y. The Y will allow us to split the flow so that we can return it into the tank in two separate lines. Here, we're going to take a short piece of tubing, we'll connect both sides of this to the hose barbs on the underside of the tank, and then we'll simply cut out where the middle portion is. The benefit of a Y instead of a T is lesser restriction of water flow. And with all the lengths of tubing cut to the proper length, we can now take those nifty snap clamps and secure the tubing onto the Y connector itself. We also want to secure the two lines on the underside of the tank. We've got two sets of fittings that require PVC cement. That's that slip to female thread adapter and the slip elbow adapter on the top of the Euro style sump. This elbow will allow the water coming from the tank to have a slightly smoother flow into the filter and won't be as loud. This is the hose barb adapter for the drain line on the underside of the tank. So the drain line will go from this point over to the top of this elbow, which in turn, this elbow and its lid will sit back here on top of the filter. That filter's designed to hold a micron sock. In the beginning, we'll use the micron sock because it'll help clear the water of all the debris as a result of the sand and such. Here I'm slipping the micron sock into place. The idea of the micron sock is to help filter out very fine particles. It does a very effective job at this, but once it's filtered out those particles, that sock gets plugged quite easily with a normal amount of debris. So we'll probably remove it shortly after the beginning of its operation. We've taken a coffee cup with some boiling water, and we're now immersing the end of the drain hose, what I'm going to call the cuff or the adapter between the flex hose and the barb. By soaking it in hot water, it becomes softer, more pliable. It makes it easier to slide onto the barb, and when it cools down, it'll contract around the barb fittings for a more secure, leak-free fitting. We'll do the same thing with the other end of the drain hose as it connects to the elbow over the top of the filter system. So here's how it all works. The water leaves the tank, drops down through the micron sock into the Euro style filter, is drawn up at the opposing end by the Iwaki pump, which discharges it over to the refrigeration unit, up through the bottom of the tank, into those two returns poking out the top or face of the internal overflow. In addition to using an aquarium computer, this customer is a big fan of the X10 system. So we've installed a large, lengthy power strip on the backside with plenty of space between each receptacle.
Okay, this is where a lot of you are probably going to take exception, but we're going to go ahead and make our synthetic seawater using faucet water and that fancy carbon filter for the aquarium.
In any situation, there's the right way, the wrong way, and the other way. And this is one of those other ways. We simply did not have the time or luxury of purifying water to fill the tank. He wanted to have the tank filled today. So we've done what we can utilizing the carbon filter.
It's filling! It's filling! Oh my god! There you go.
All future additions of water will either be purified water for top-off or natural or real ocean water for water changes. We'll now go ahead and begin to add the salt mix. We've got 2 bags. Each bag makes 50 gallons. This being a 100-gallon tank, we're going to introduce 2 bags, and with the addition of 100 gallons of fresh water, we'll be able to make 100 gallons of salt water. The water has risen to the top of the tank and is just now beginning to spill into the internal overflow. You can see the standpipe down there. We don't have that funky cap on there yet. And it's just spilled over the standpipe, which in turn is allowing the water to come down into the top of the Euro-style filter and begin filling up that Micron sock.
Yeah. Still pretty close.
Let's give it a test run and see what happens. Aside from that small leak on the inlet side of the water pump, everything seems to be working as it's supposed to. We're moving water from the filter up to the tank, from the tank back down into the filter system.
You can hear it from outside.
Now that we've fired up the system, it's a strong water pump, and it comes with a strong water pump noise. It also generates a goodly amount of flow. You can see here with the amount of water spilling into the tank via the internal overflow. And we'll now put the muffling cap onto the standpipe in the internal overflow, and let's see what happens. It sounds like there was a definite decrease in the drain noise. The strong water flow in the tank is having an obvious effect in dissolving the salt. You can see here that it's blown a patch away. Other than that tiny little leak on the inlet side of the water pump, so far everything seems to be holding steady. You can take a look at all the fittings here from the water pump over to the in and out of the refrigeration unit. No drips. So be sure to come back for part 3. I'll try to relate to you some of my tips on how to properly set up the water level for a reef system so you don't end up with a flood on the floor.